5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey, space enthusiasts. After a short travel-induced break, we are back with a new episode. My guest this time is Shey Sabripour, the founder and CEO of a company called CesiumAstro, which is a prominent US-based later-stage startup in the satellite communications area. Specifically, they design and build phased array communications platforms. Actually, not only for satellites, but also for other aerial platforms like drones. You may now wonder what phased array is, but don't worry, Shey explains it in the episode. In any event, it's important technology, as also evidenced by the fact that CesiumAstro just managed to raise a $60 million round a couple of months ago. Please enjoy my conversation with Shey.
My name is Raphael Rodkin, and I'm an investor and advisor to space companies. Just as a reminder, this podcast is for informational purposes only, and nothing should be taken as investment advice. This podcast is sponsored by NanoAvionics, a satellite manufacturer and mission integrator. Their technologies enable many space companies worldwide to offer services that improve life right here on Earth, such as providing global connectivity, conducting Earth observation, or contributing to scientific discoveries. Check them out, and also check out my episode with their CEO and co-founder. Sadly, I am not a rocket scientist, but I'm an alumnus of the International Space University. ISU offers a number of educational programs about space worldwide. Check them out at isunet.edu.
And just some final things before we start the episode about ourselves. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platforms such as Apple or Spotify. If you want us help expand our work, you can do so and support us at www.patreon.com/Space Business Podcast, and we'll also put that link in the episode notes. And lastly, you can follow us on Twitter at podcast_space. Hello, everybody. It's finally time again for another episode of the Space Business Podcast. I'm thrilled this week to have as my guest Shey Sabripour from CesiumAstro. Welcome, Shey.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
And Shey, why don't we start off, as always on the Space Business Podcast, if you could give us the quote-unquote elevator pitch on CesiumAstro.
Yeah, CesiumAstro is a company that I founded 5.5 years ago to focus on active phased array technologies for satellites, drones, commercial aircraft, and other applications. This is something that I have been passionate about all of my career. Wanted to be involved in more agile, small satellites, and be able to provide technologies that can reuse the frequency and use the spectrum in a more efficient way.
Okay, and since we always market ourselves as sort of a non-technical podcast, because one of our objectives is to attract more people from outside the existing space community, I have to ask you to explain what the phased array antenna is.
Yes, active phased arrays have been around for decades and decades, and they've been used in various applications. Essentially, you can think of it as transitioning from, let's say, 1G cellular network to now 5G and beyond, and 6G, hopefully, in a decade. It basically provides you with electronically steerable RF beam, electromagnetic waves, allowing you to point the beam where the customers are, and allows you to create multiple beams so you can reuse the frequency, allows you to share the beam, and a lot of other benefits that active phased arrays provide you. For example, if you had one large beam that covers all of, let's say, Zurich, and as users start using their cell phones, you can saturate the beam very quickly because everybody's using that one frequency that's being broadcast or illuminating the entire Zurich area, for example. As technology grew, as you know, we added more and more smaller cells so you can reuse the frequency and so that more people can join the network. The same works for satellites. If you have a satellite in orbit that covers an entire continent, in our case, continental US, that large beam was used for broadcasting applications where signals were uploaded, uplinked to the satellite, and then downlinked to the entire country. And that was good for broadcasting. But when you want to have a point-to-point communication, you can see that it's not a good, efficient way of providing that that beam. And what you want is steerable beams and shapeable beams that cover geographical areas. And then if the business plan changes and you want a different plan for the satellite, you can reuse the satellite. Let's say you move the satellite over to Europe. I'm talking about geostationary satellites. You move the satellite over to Europe and reshape the beam to serve that market. Now, as we expanded towards low Earth orbit satellites and medium Earth orbit satellites, then it necessitates active phased arrays because satellites move overhead in a couple of minutes, and the satellite and the user need to point the beam at each other. That's where active phased arrays really become a necessity, and you really don't have a lot of good choices other than using electronically steerable beams.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that because I mean, as you mentioned, as you go from GEO to LEO, right, and that's why we also have these really big constellations, right? Because you obviously need many more satellites than cover an area. Because if you are in a sort of ISS type orbit, it's a 90-minute orbit period, right? So you need quite a few satellites in the shell. So this kind of concept, has been around for a while of LEO constellations, right? Famously, sort of in the mid-late 90s, right? A few people have tried. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you've been in the industry much longer than myself, right? I think one big reason is that a lot of the constellations failed in the sort of mid-late 90s. The people like ICO, Iridium in its first iteration, and Global Star and so forth, was because of the terminals, if I understand it correctly, and because they were very expensive at the time. Have we made progress in that regard?
Yeah,
20 years ago.
Made. I wouldn't say that they failed because of terminals. I think the technology in many aspects were not quite ready. But companies like Iridium they had a successful technology in orbit. They successfully launched their satellites. It was just a business. More at the time, it was more of a business failure. Time to market and other aspects that were involved in those things. Perhaps it wasn't the right time for those LEO constellations. But you're right. Also, the technologies required to make a successful LEO constellation are technologies such as phased arrays on the satellite, efficient, low-cost phased arrays on the satellites. You need a lot of satellites, right? You need, as you can see from Starlink and others, you need to really serve a good broadband market. You need thousands, if not tens of thousands, of satellites in orbit, and so that you have to make them inexpensive. You have to make them reliable. So technology is required for the satellite as well as the ground terminals. And ground terminals, as you can imagine, they cannot be $10,000 or $50,000 a piece. So there's been incredible progress made for both ends of this technology need, both like what we do for satellites and drone, as well as what we don't do at our company yet is ground terminals. But both of those technologies are maturing quite nicely.
And I assume that the price has come down in comparison to 20 years ago.
Come down, yes, drastically, yes.
We're talking about sort of like an order of magnitude.
Yeah, we build phased arrays today for space and drones and commercial aircraft that are an order of magnitude less expensive than the ones I used in my career at a major prime contractor. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Over the past 20 years, as we have gone from 3G to 4G, 4G LTE, and 5G, and also advent of a lot of automotive technologies resulted in a lot of chipsets that, quite honestly, weren't available in the late 1990s and early 2000s. So we've made incredible investments in the semiconductor industry to build chips and technologies that make this possible now for this sort of a new low Earth orbit space economy.
Let's take a step back, because you mentioned your career somewhere in the middle. How did you decide to start CesiumAstro? What's the sort of origin story there? What was your motivation?
I'm an electrical engineer. I started my career at Lockheed Martin Space Systems Company. I was there for 24 years. I was involved in a number of geostationary satellites, ranging from smaller geostationary satellites to very large, both commercial and defense applications. And these satellites were really awe-inspiring because they're quite complex and serve a very good purpose. But I always wondered, there is a need for more agile, smaller satellites that can serve, the telecommunication and some other applications better with software-defined satellites, with software-defined smaller satellites using phased array technology. That's something that started thinking about in the 1990s, and ultimately, although we pioneered some phased array technologies at Lockheed Martin, I really wanted to make this more commercially available as a full stack product, and that's one of the differentiators in our company is that phased array communication payloads are quite complex, and if you want to make this commercially available to various companies, and let's say some of these air taxi companies who want to focus on their business plan, they're not communications people. You've got to produce a product that they can use right out of the box. And that was the pillar of our company, that you shouldn't, we want to build a product that works right out of the box, and it has all the subsystems necessary for them to put it on any platform. That's easier said than done. Because it involves antenna technology, radio frequency, chipset technology, software-defined radio, compute, power, and all of this has to be assembled in software, DSP, algorithms. All of this has to work together to create a product that can be used on multiple platforms, satellites, drones. It's a lot harder than it seems, because these type of platforms have different requirements. Satellites have a different set of requirements. Drones have a different set of requirements. Commercial aircraft has a different set of requirements. So we came up with these Lego-like building blocks that allows us to build very sophisticated communications and RF sensing technologies using a set of bricks, essentially. So we have frequencies from L-band in a gigahertz or so, all the way up to V-band, up to 6 gigahertz, that you can rack and stack and choose various components to build a very complex payload. For a customer who doesn't really have communication expertise, they can put it on their platform and use it right away. That was the pillar of our company and the reason we exist.
So just because we usually have, I think, also a lot of sort of aspirational entrepreneurs listening, that now sounds like, you were doing many things at once, but was it really like that, or was there sort of like a step-by-step and maybe a minimum viable product when you didn't have all of the pieces ready yet? Because I guess there's also sort of like always the funding restriction.
Yeah.
How did it look along the 5.5 years?
That's a very good question. So it does, the kind of technology that we've developed requires pretty much every field of electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, some aerospace, a lot of software, and the full stack software. And so we started with a core technology. We started at one frequency. Our most mature product is a Ka band active phased array system. So we started with that, gathered all the required talent needed to build this system. Like I said, everything from DSP to software to firmware to the hardware itself. And we built these products. So our Gen 1 products actually have been completed. We've started marketing them. They've been qualified. And then now we're investing in our Gen 2 product to expand the frequency ranges and go to other frequencies. Step by step. And one of the things that I can tell you is we started with this core technology, but then now we've announced that we have started a division in Broomfield, Colorado, that's building a small satellite, not a CubeSat, but a small sat, about 150 ESPA class, so about 150 kilogram satellite around our phased arrays, so that now we can provide a full stack solution to our end customers.
So you will provide a satellite as well?
As well, yes. It's something that was in stealth mode for a while, but we've made that announcement at our Series B round that we're expanding our vertical integration of our satellite. Again, this is not to build a constellation or compete with constellation providers, rather than we want to be able to sell our full stack technology to our end customers.
To people who may want to do constellations.
For people who may want to do constellations, or it can be a government application, it can be a number of other applications that require our technology, but they can't just buy the payload and then they have to go find a satellite company. So we decided to build a satellite around it to sell it to those customers. At the same time, I can tell you that we continue to sell our phased array products to all customers around the world. It isn't that you have to buy our satellite. We sell our phased array as a building block as well by itself.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question. There's obviously a number of both traditional satellite integrators out there, as well as any number of, I'm just going to say newcomers, even though some of them have been around quite a few years now, right? Yeah. Why did you feel that need to enter the field yourself?
As far as why in the satellite, I think the main reason is that there are many customers who really don't don't have the capability or don't have the required staff to take a very sophisticated communications or RF sensing payload and integrate it with someone else's platform. And I'm talking about, in this case, about satellite business. I mean, of course, our products are sold to drone providers and to aircraft. We're not building our own drones or aircraft, but something that we have a lot of expertise in, and that's our background, that's my background. And those customers have come to us quite honestly. Our government customers have come to us and said, look, you have the payload. Satellite buses are now a commodity. Either buy a bus from somebody or build your own. So we decided in January of 2020 to start our own satellite capability. So that's those customers who want our payload, but cannot really go to a prime contractors due to cost reasons or a number of other reasons, to be able to directly buy from us.
Yeah, and you mentioned this is a small sat, so we're talking something like 100 kilograms, something like that.
Kilograms, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And is this primarily for LEO?
It's primarily for LEO, yes. For now. I mean, we might have some applications that we're thinking about in small micro geo as well, but LEO.
Yeah. Okay, you started talking about your customers there. Can you give us a little bit of an overview of like the customer segments you serve and what is important to different people, how different people use your products in a value-added manner?
A great question. Yeah, our customer set, as it is with any small company like us, technology company in the US, we've had great support from our Department of Defense, and we've had a number of contracts with the Air Force, Navy, Missile Defense Agency, NASA. We've had multiple NASA contracts, and then of course some commercial customers that we've been working with. These range from the satellites to satellite communication to satellites that use our technology for radar applications, because phased arrays can be used both in communications and radar, to autonomous vehicles, not the phased array that's on the car, but a phased array that can serve autonomous vehicles, to drone applications, so a large number of customers both in commercial and defense are using our products.
When you talk to your different types of customers, since this is a very sophisticated, let's call it a deep tech product, I feel very often in the space sector, in my experience, sometimes there's this dichotomy between talking to the engineering people, right?
Yes.
And the engineering people who understand your product, they may immediately get very excited. But then you have to convince the business people to open the purse as well, right? Is that something that's easy for you guys to do, or how are you handling this type of customer approach?
It's been quite easy, actually. It's an interesting question because I remember when I first hired my first business development director, and he attended a bunch of customer meetings with me. Even as you said, even at the executive level or at the business level, he told me right away. He says, like, Shey, we've never had a bad meeting. Every customer we go to, their sentiment is pretty much great. When can I have it, and how much is it? So it's really easy to convince customers who need this technology. This is an enabling technology for many applications. If you think about even commercial aircraft applications, the reason that there are a number of flat panel array companies now that are using either passive phased array or active phased array technologies, because as you know, the internet the connectivity on aircraft, the ones that don't use this kind of technology, they don't work very well. You have mechanically steered antennas trying to maintain connection to geostationary spacecraft. So it's very easy to convince customers that this is a technology that's coming, it's required. LEO constellations are going up, and you're going to need this kind of technology, whether it's an air taxi or commercial aircraft or drones for the military or many other applications. You need this technology. So it's not a hard sell to even business people. It's just a matter of cost. When is it available? Is the right frequency available? When can I buy it? Where can I buy it? As you pointed out earlier, Raphael, is the ground terminal available for this? So all of those things are, in my opinion, it's a perfect timing for this technology. And we're seeing it. Our company cannot grow fast enough right now.
And speaking of not growing fast enough, so one sort of very common question when we're talking about high growth and potential bottlenecks these days is supply chain issues. I mean, just worldwide, many industries. Is that an issue for you guys? What are you seeing there?
It is. I mean, we luckily made an investment in buying the critical chips that we needed a couple of years ago, and we continue to do strategic investments in buying the chips that we need. But it is an issue. The other day I got a quote for a particular chip that was a lead time of 90 weeks, 90 weeks, 90 weeks.
Okay.
So it's quite interesting market right now. But luckily, we've been able to stockpile a number of critical chips, so that's the way we've handled it.
Your types of chipsets you're using, does that have to be radiation hardened, or what's the
we use radiation tolerant chipsets. We have done a lot of our own testing. And depending on on what kind of platform we're on, if it's a low Earth orbit satellite, we've also used some automotive grade parts that we have upscreened ourselves and done the radiation testing ourselves and ensure that they meet the mission duration and the radiation tolerance required. And then in some applications that are long-term, even in LEO, requires high radiation environment and radiation parts. And so we can buy those kind of parts. So both upgraded, we call it careful cuts, sort of upgraded automotive grade parts as well as well-established radiation hardened parts.
But that essentially sounds like you guys are using like commercial off-the-shelf parts almost.
Automotive grade and above, yeah. So we use automotive grade parts and traditional radiation tolerant and radiation hardened parts, depending on the application, depending on the customer requirement.
And sort of to what extent is that, like how much space heritage is there now? Like sort of roughly speaking, how much, how many systems do you guys have in space? And
we just the first 3 years of our company, we developed our Gen 1 products. We started marketing our Gen 1 products about a year and a half ago or so during COVID, and so we've just started shipping our product. We started shipping our product middle of last year, and now we're shipping it. So our first space heritage will really happen around October of this year, and multiple other missions next year. We did launch 2 satellites that was a hosted payload. We supplied our Nightingale technology to a company, well-established CubeSat company that was supposed to integrate and pretty much launch the satellite. But unfortunately, their satellite, even though it was a well-known satellite CubeSat manufacturer, unfortunately their satellites. The 2 satellites failed. They failed to properly design it and deploy it, and it failed. The power system failed in orbit. So we didn't get to test our payload in their satellite, but we have multiple opportunities right now. We're launching with several other companies as a hosted payload until our own satellite becomes available, where hopefully by end of 23, Q1 of 24, we'll have our own satellite. That'll be our inaugural launch of our own satellite with our own payload.
Terrific. And so from that first test in later this year, what are the main things you'll be looking for to come out of that?
Right, we have several tests of our own IP that we have developed that we're testing, as well as with our customer. We've had one of our customers is Defense Innovation Unit of the Department of Defense, U.S. Department of Defense. We've had some NASA customers that have been supporting us, and so we're testing some link optimization techniques, waveform switching techniques, and several other technologies with our Ka-band Nightingale that we'll be launching this year.
You mentioned you started with Ka-band, sort of like in the strategic map of the company. To the extent you want to talk about it, what comes next? So what would be the next products?
Right. So we have had our first Nightingale working at a sort of a Ka-band technology that's aligned with 5G NTN, as well as a NASA Ka-band, which is about 24 to 29 gigahertz. we're about to roll out a traditional commercial and military KA, which is in the order of 20 and 30, like 30 gigahertz receive and around 20 gigahertz transmit. Our very next, actually two frequencies that we're rolling out. One of them is at a higher frequency in the Q and V band. So let's say from upper 20s to all the way up to 60. And then the next one that we're working on is in KU band as well. So we have a design that we've been working on for a commercial KU satellite KU band. So it's in the order of essentially 10 to 20. And then we've also have had some defense contracts around L band. So our L band technology is also quite mature. So
yeah, understood. And then I guess I've been assuming we're mostly talking about sort of like communication between space and Earth, but is there also some sort of angle like of like in-space communication, so inter-satellite links? Is that also something that comes into play here?
Right. In some applications, yes. For example, we have been part of a NASA Ames program called Starlink. Not Starlink, Starling. It's a formation flight of 4 small satellites. We provided the communication system for the inter-satellite link between those 4 satellites. Hopefully those satellites will be launched early next year. That was actually one of our first designs, and when we shipped that entire system to them, it's actually operating at S-band, and it provides the ad hoc network. Essentially allows the satellites to communicate with each other and develop a mesh network. Even if one of the satellites fails, allows the communication network to be established. So that worked, and we've looked at also some V-band inter-satellite link. But quite honestly, for the kind of LEO constellations that people typically think of, and you can think of is a better fit for inter-satellite link is laser communication.
Sure.
So there's, for some close applications for formation flight, RF works. But, if you're trying to cover 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 kilometers, laser communication is a better use of a better technology to use in this case.
No, understood. And we're huge fans here at my firm of laser comms. And Bulent Altan from Mineric was on a few episodes ago.
Actually, that's right. I know Bulent very well, and I'm a big supporter of that technology.
And I guess it's all very complementary in a way, right?
Of course, yeah, of course. I've always believed all of these technologies are complementary to each other. I've never been one to say that one technology fits all, or one orbit, LEO is everything, or MEO is everything, or GEO. I think all of these technologies, small satellites, large satellites, phased arrays, laser communication, all of these technologies are very complementary, including like satellite networks are not going to replace fiber or our cellular. I think all of these will have to coexist and complement each other to provide the best service possible. I've always believed that what ultimately matters is that a packet of information goes from one side of the earth to the other side of the earth with the lowest latency, highest security and resiliency possible. And it shouldn't matter whether it's going through fiber or cellular network or satellite. I think we will ultimately converge in a network infrastructure that's automatically routes the signal, routes the packets of information in the most efficient manner. And that's why I've always been passionate about phased array technologies, because phased array technologies are the general purpose technologies that make this possible. And so that's the future that I see, really being able to completely take these vertically stovepiped, I own this spectrum and no one else can use it. I own this and I own that. I think someday I hope that spectrum sharing will be something that just is done automatically by some AI machine that allows people not to interfere with each other and decide what's the best, the most efficient manner in which a packet goes from one place to the other, and let the machines, whether it's through satellites, GEO, MEO, LEO, or fiber or cellular, do the optimization and say, okay, this is the best way. I believe that's the future. If it's not 10 years from now, 20 years from now, someday spectrum will be used in a very different manner.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I'm certainly in our role of investors, we are aware of several projects. I'm sure the same people who are people who are basically trying to work on exactly that, right? Of course, facing certain barriers, but it would be sort of a very, I think, desirable outcome. So that is basically is a trifecta of what did you say? It's latency, security, and I guess cost, right?
And cost, of course, yeah.
And that's sort of kind of touching upon my next question I was going to ask you, which is sort of like unfair, open-ended question, which is, where do you see like satellite communications going? Because like right now there's a lot of like moving pieces, a lot of like recent changes, sort of like going from GEO towards LEO, laser comms coming more into play. But what is sort of your overall vision, if you have any? Because you guys, I guess, must be thinking about this strategically in your company.
Yeah.
It's who you sell to.
Yeah, no, I think it's exactly what I was just talking about. I think it's the culmination of these complementary technologies coexisting and working together as a bigger system. So I believe a geostationary orbit is a valuable orbit. It has incredible advantages, and that will be used for the right application and right usage. MEO has certain advantages. LEO has certain advantages. I think they're all going to coexist. I think we need to build this infrastructure, and then as we transition on Earth to 5G and beyond, I think that will exist. Fiber optics will exist, and as you pointed out, with companies like Mynaric, unique technologies that can link all these satellites together, and that technology needs to be matured. The cost needs to be lowered, as well as our technology phased arrays need to be matured to get into satellites, aircraft, planes, trains, and automobiles, and all of those have different cost points, right? So when all of that happens, and we can really connect this network the proper way, rather than and when we can reuse the spectrum in the proper way, I think that's when I think that's what I see as a vision for the company, and we're providing a very important, critical aspect of it. But there are many other companies who are working on other aspects of it also.
So that's the vision of the overall industry, and then I guess sort of your medium long-term vision for CesiumAstro is. It sounds like you guys are almost like a picks and shovels provider to that overall vision.
Yeah, two parts of our company. We're picks and shovels provider of that, which I like. It's because it's a good, sound business strategy. Yeah. I've always believed when you build a company, you should really start from the core technology. It's one thing if you have a business plan and you say, I want to put up a bunch of satellites, and then you go and say, okay, I got to go raise $5 billion. That's not so easy. My approach has been develop the core technology that's required that you can sell as picks and shovels, as you pointed out, get some market traction, and then build on it. So that's why we started with the core phased array technology. Within the next 4 years, we will have frequencies from L-band all the way up B-band to serve our customers. But we're not going to stop there. As I mentioned, we're going to add the satellite component to it and sort of build inside out rather than outside in. I think it's easier to raise money and build a successful company if you start with a core technology and methodically grow the company rather than the other way around, where you create a PowerPoint and you say, no, I got to go raise $10 billion. Not so easy. So our approach has been methodical, start with picks and shovels, gain market traction, and then build the platforms around it that we're good at. We're not going to get into drones or anything anytime soon, but phased arrays, satellites, and then we'll see what happens 5 years from now.
So, I mean, you touched upon funding there. And so, okay, you guys are 5.5 years old. So you were started, I guess somewhere 2016, sometime in 2016.
January 2017. We started in January 2017.
Okay. Yeah. So, a lot of the things that people in the space sector now kind of talk about and take for granted, it was much less prominent then, right? I think Elon had just about opened his first Starlink facility. Yeah. And so how easy was it to raise money back then for this vision? And how does it look now?
Yeah, I mean, raising money is raising money from the right investors, of course, is what you have to do. I don't want to say it's easy or it's hard. You just have to work hard and find the right investors. We did. We had seed investors who were very supportive of us, and then we went and we used that small investment as a seed investment to grow our team. It was a team of 3 people initially, and we grew our team. And then we raised Series A. And like I said, the challenge was finding the right investors. And we've been very lucky to have incredible investors that have supported us throughout the years for our Series A. And we just closed our Series B in February, which we're very proud of the investors we have. Airbus Ventures, Kleiner Perkins, Forever Ventures, and Lavrock, Franklin Templeton Black Horse Fund, as well as Honeywell Ventures, and one of our recent strategic investors, L3 Harris. So we're very proud of the investment syndicate that we have built around the company.
No, it's certainly a blue chip cap table, so congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And how big is your team now?
Our team is just about 100. So I think we have a couple of offers out. If they accept, I think we'll hit 100 any day now.
How many locations?
We have our headquarters in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
And we have a large office in Broomfield, Colorado. We just hired our first couple of employees in LA, and we're planning to build an office in LA. We'll have some outposts in Seattle, in Washington, D.C., as well as Boston. And we just established our entity in Germany. So we're about to hire our first employee in Germany as well to have our European presence.
Yeah. So I mean, like, as we all know, the space industry sort of like heated up the last few years. How has hiring become more difficult, or is it still finding people easily?
Hiring, I'm used to being asked what keeps you up at night. Hiring keeps you up at night. Talent acquisition is really challenging. It's a lot of high-tech companies. Austin is very competitive. That's why we're going to where the talent is. This is why we're opening offices where the talent is, whether it's in Europe or in various tech hubs in the U.S. We're going where the talent is. And so, yes, it's difficult, but luckily, I think we have a very good culture and a startup culture that people enjoy, and a really cool technology that people can enjoy as a career.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, just Austin changed a lot over the last few years as well. So it's
incredible.
Heating up. So you're like in an industry that heated up, and a location that heated up very much. It has its own gigafactory now.
Yeah, indeed. But no, Austin is a great town. I mean, I tell you, Austin is amazing. Of course, Denver is also amazing. So I'm very lucky that we've been able to establish our divisions in two really cool cities.
Yeah. Okay, and then we can put a website link to the extent you're hiring right now. People can go to your website, I guess, and find out.
Yes, all the positions are on our website. Yeah.
Terrific. So let me ask you a couple of sort of non-CesiumAstro questions to round off here, which we always ask is sort of one, if you were not doing CesiumAstro and phased array technology, and of course you're sort of following the space sector in general to some extent because that's where your customer base is, at least in StatCom. Are there any other areas you find particularly exciting? Yeah,
I mean, I think I've always been very excited about AI and machine learning, and as well as robotics. I think not only just for space, and I think that will both AI and machine learning and robotics have a large necessity in space, but in general, I'm very interested in those technologies. I think that's what you're asking me. What other technologies I find exciting?
Yeah.
I think personally, I find the area of AI and machine learning for a couple of decades I've been interested in it. But of course, I've focused my attention on space. But I think autonomous vehicles and in general, autonomous or industry 4.0, I think is an area that I'm also very interested in. An autonomous world. I think connectivity for an autonomous world is what I'm after with our company. But in general, I think technologies such as robotics, AI interest me greatly.
Well, and then if we're talking about things like autonomous mobility, that's where really all of this comes together, right? This is where comms or the sat and aerial comms using your technology is where you need certainly a lot of AI, then I guess some type of robotics as well. So
that's right. Yeah,
that makes sense. And then, if you allow me, the last question we always ask, it's a tradition, is about science fiction and whether you enjoy science fiction, and if so, if there's any particular works you would like to highlight.
Do I enjoy science fiction? I do enjoy science fiction. One of the reasons I'm in the space business is because of when I was a young man, very very young man, I used to read these books from Jules Verne.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was my first exposure to science fiction. And then, of course, like most people, I watched as a kid Star Trek and Star Wars. And unfortunately, nowadays, I don't have as much time. Running a startup is a triple full-time job, but I am interested in science fiction as well.
Yes, as I sometimes say, anybody who's a guest on this podcast is excused from consuming science fiction, as hopefully they help to create some of the science fiction.
Yes, indeed.
In this sense, Shey, let me wish you the best of luck for your upcoming in-orbit demonstration in the fall. And I think that's probably the really big, important milestone.
Thank you, Raphael. It's a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much.
All right. Have a great day.
And that's a wrap for another nominal episode of the Space Business Podcast. Once more, if you enjoyed this, please leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platforms such as Apple or Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_space. You can support us at www.patreon.com/Space Business Podcast. Lastly, if you have any feedback, including ideas for guests, and that may include yourself if you have an interesting space story to tell, or interested in being a sponsor, drop us an email at spacebusinesspodcast@gmail.com. See you for the next episode.